Without candor, there is no trust. Because if you have trust as the foundation of a corporate culture and a business, you've got people operating on all cylinders, wanting to work together. They're aligned in a mission, aligned in a strategy, and you're going to be generating better results than your competitors who don't have high levels of trust.
Welcome to The Successful Pitch. If you're a startup founder struggling with your investor pitch, we can teach you the steps to get funded fast. We interview investors who share their pitch funding criteria. We also talk with founders who share their startup funding success stories. Funding strategist John Livesay is your host each episode. Having helped many businesses craft their funding pitch, Inc. magazine now calls him the Pitch Whisperer. John will help you learn to craft your own concise and compelling pitch using the same tactics he used helping businesses during his 15-year award-winning sales career at Condé Nast, combined with insights from his best-selling book, The 7 Most Powerful Selling Secrets. Once you are pitch perfect from the tips you learn on this podcast, John can make the all-important warm introductions to the right investors who have appeared on the show. Your funding success begins with The Successful Pitch.
Today's guest on The Successful Pitch is Laura Rittenhouse, the author of Investing Between the Lines. Warren Buffett endorsed her book, so she clearly knows what she's talking about. She is an expert in candor. She has a candor investment fund as well as a candor boot camp. She said, when you lie to other people, you end up lying to yourself as well. And she has 7 systems that really help you be really focused on knowing how to be successful in investing. One of her key elements is looking at a shareholder's letter and being able to predict how that company is going to perform in the stock market based on what kind of candor the CEO shows in that stockholder's letter. So your communication is everything. She said, without candor, there is no trust. And nothing happens outside conversation. So make sure that you're having clear, concise conversations with people that tell them what your purpose is, that expands upon your vision for the company. The interview begins in 45 seconds, right after this information on how you can get funded fast.
Are you a funder struggling with your investor pitch? Do you need warm introductions to the right investors to get your startup funded? Do you need a funding roadmap to get you there fast? All of this and more can be found in Crack the Funding Code. Join host John Livesay and Judy Robinett, best-selling author of How to Be a Power Connector and board member of Illuminate Ventures, on their free Crack the Funding Code webinar. Simply go to Judy Robinett, that's JudyRobinett.com, and click on the webinar tab to see how to tap into their network of investors from around the world. There's a link in the show notes as well. You're only one click away from getting funded fast.
Hi, and welcome to The Successful Pitch. Today, I'm thrilled to have as my guest Laura Rittenhouse, who is a trust and valuation expert, as well as a financial strategist and innovation coach to Fortune 500 and small cap companies. She's the founder and CEO of Rittenhouse Rankings and the author of an amazing book called Investing Between the Lines, How to Make Smarter Decisions by Decoding CEO Communications. I've had the opportunity to talk with her before the show, and you are all in for a huge treat. Laura, welcome.
Thank you, John. What a pleasure to be with you on this call.
Well, you are not only someone who's smart and kind and connected, but just so enthusiastic about life. And I just love people like you who make the world a better place. So before we get into all the books and your connections to Warren Buffett, who, by the way, everybody, Warren Buffett said that you are on the side of the angels. So Laura is, in fact, somebody that you're going to want to get to know, and you must read her books, Investing Between the Line, Buffett Bites, just such an expert. How did you become who you are? Take us back a little bit, before you started your company and, your first early jobs that made you want to get into all this world of investing.
Well, coming out of college, my first job was being accepted as a Peace Corps volunteer.
Oh, I love it.
And I worked in an orphanage in Turkey, and that was one of the most meaningful. It was a great experience because it was a total failure. Well, it wasn't a total failure, but it was a failure in the sense that we had signed on for a 2-year commitment, and it ended up being 1 year because the revolutionary fists of a free and democratic Turkey wanted to bang on their heads.
Wow.
And it was thought that it would be a good idea for us to leave the country at that point.
Well, that leads me right into, I'm going to jump around, but we'll go back to your background. You were ranked one of the 100 most trustworthy people in America by Trust Across America. So, if you're an expert in candor and trust. So, but you just wrote this amazing blog, Clown Without Borders. And so now that I know that you were in the Peace Corps, it even speaks more to why you have such authenticity around this. Can you just tell us a little bit about that great blog you wrote, Clowns Without Borders, and how you're making such a difference in the world by just putting that out there for people?
What an amazing story, John. This story gives us a window into the whole topic of candor. I blog for Forbes, and what I've wanted to start is a series on candor heroes. So, and who are the candor heroes? They're people who, and as you and I have discussed, are courageous in shining light into dark places. Mm-hmm. And that mission is embodied in the very word. The word candor comes from the Latin candere, which means to illuminate. So the word candle, of course, comes from that same root word. And when you think, what does illumination do? It shines light into dark places. So leaders who do that, very impressive and also very courageous. So the blog started out of a webinar I was listening to on a topic very much related to candor called conversational intelligence. Wonderful work. It links brain neuroscience with the opportunity we have to use conversation in a way to create good things in the world and to avoid creating bad things. So the person who hosted this, a man named Benjamin Croft, at the very end of the blog, he said, well, glad that you were on the call today. And by the way, in a few weeks, I'm going to be near the Syrian border with Clowns Without Borders. Wish me luck. And I was stunned. I thought, oh my heavens, Clowns Without Borders? I know about doctors, but who ever heard of clowns? So I immediately Googled them. It's a legitimate organization. I contacted Benjamin. He wrote back to me, and we've become friends since then. And yes, indeed, this story happened after the Paris attacks. He was in Istanbul at the time, and he said, we have to do something. What can we do? He used the money that they earned from giving this webinar, and they sponsored a tour of Clowns Without Borders. They brought clowns over from the U.S. They contacted clowns in Turkey, and they, after about a week and a half of training and so on, they actually went to these refugee camps along the border. There was one place they went to in eastern Turkey where only just a month before, 20 people had been massacred on the same stage where they were performing. So it was almost like an exorcism there to have this horrible experience now transformed by the clowns into a place of joy. And I felt so strongly that it was important to get this message out to the world. And I've gotten terrific response, wonderful emails back from people who were so inspired by it.
Well, it's just taking a wonderful concept of lighting something in dark places and bringing it to life, because it doesn't get much darker than that. And clowns are such a opposite, you don't think you have time for laughter and joy when you're in survival mode. And yet something like that can remind us all of how we can shift our focus so quickly. And like you said, don't curse the darkness, light a candle, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love what Benjamin said, too, when he said, there are lots of things we could have brought them stuff, but stuff can be stolen. Stuff is used. We wanted to bring something that couldn't be stolen, that could last forever.
Oh, that's so
like
wonderful.
A memory like this. How can you not love it?
Making a difference. Now, you were at Lehman Brothers for 10 years, being involved with corporate finance, and then, now you're at running Rittenhouse Rankings, and you really have become an expert in being able to cut to the chase, as it were, really cut through the clutter and get to what's going on. So tell us about, Candor Investment Fund and what you do there.
So leaving Lehman Brothers, and you asked earlier, how did I get to do the things I'm doing today?
Yes.
So I loved being at Lehman Brothers. This was the time when Wall Street was still very much guided by the value of making sure that clients were taken care of and serving them and coming up with brilliant ideas on how they could run their businesses better. But I reached a point in my life where I felt that I think a lot of people, if you're lucky, you get to the point where you say, well, whose life am I living? Am I living the life I should live or the life that I truly was born to live? And so I decided I wanted to take some time out to figure out what that was. And so I spent a year traveling, talking to people. A lot of the CEOs that I had worked with on Wall Street called me and they said, we still want to work with you. What can we do? And so we began to set up investor relations programs, which at that time was a new thing to do. And in doing that, it became clear that the reputation of the CEO was a major factor in the stock price valuation. And so if my CEO clients could become truly effective, authentic communicators and build trust, because without candor, there is no trust, then this would be a very powerful way to enhance the valuation of their company. And also, because if you have trust as the foundation of a corporate culture and a business, you've got people operating on all cylinders, wanting to work together. They're aligned in a mission, aligned in a strategy, and you're going to be generating better results than your competitors who don't have high levels of trust.
We're going to tweet that out. Without candor, there is no trust. That is so insightful. What do you think caused you to be ranked as one of the 100 most trustworthy people in business? You're clearly an expert in this. I'd love to have you define, what makes people trustworthy is they have to be candor and transparent, right? I believe it's one of the things you've talked about before.
Well, I have a client that when he introduces me to people, he likes to say, I'd like you to meet LJ Rittenhouse. She spots bullshit faster than anyone on the planet.
That's great.
I consider that a great tribute.
It is. Well, one of your key expertises is looking at a shareholder's letter and a stock report and being able to not even have to read anything else to determine whether that's a good investment or not, right?
Well, that's exactly right, John, and that is what has led to creating the first ever Candor investment fund. And so, in that work I was doing with CEOs, working with them on their strategies, in order to be effective with your investors, you had to have a very compelling story, and it had to be real. And again, the basis of conversational intelligence is that nothing happens outside of conversation. Nothing. Conversation is the special sauce that creates things in the world. It's
not emails. It's not your proposal. It's not your business plan. It's conversation, right?
Well, it's conversations about the business plan.
Right. But
it's emails that stimulate conversation. And again, person to person is still more powerful ultimately than digital to digital, although I don't want to take anything away from digital. We've seen that it can have a lot of power too.
Right.
But in terms of, in my experience, moving things forward in the world, especially new things, that something like candor, that it's funny, people are afraid of candor. When I say the word, they get nervous. Because they think that I'm judging them as to whether they're lying or telling the truth. And what people, I think more importantly, what people miss is the element of authenticity. Mark Twain wrote so many wonderful things about candor and truth and lying. He said, tell the truth and then you don't have to remember what you said.
There you go. Well, and it's so important when you're pitching for an investor too, that you are authentic, because you can't lie. It'll come out during due diligence and then the whole deal will fall apart.
Right. Well, there goes the trust.
Yes.
There goes the trust. But getting back, so you're asking about the shareholder letters. So as I was advising my CEO clients, I read lots and lots of shareholder letters. I read my clients' letters, and then I read the letters of their competitors or their peer companies. And over time, I began to see patterns. And that's the first step in creating a model of reality. That's the first step in creating a taxonomy so that you could begin to find the similarities and the differences and the ability to compare and contrast. Does that make sense to you?
It does. I think it's fascinating that you can measure something like candor into structure and then make predictions based on that.
Well, the book, Investing Between the Lines, which I was I never expected this. It was more than a dream come true. But this book was recommended by Warren Buffett in his shareholder letter, the granddaddy, the gold standard of all shareholder letters. And Warren, throughout the years, has been very supportive of our work. So what the analysis, when investors, portfolio managers, I've talked with them over the years, and I'll give them my conclusions about the value proposition, the investing value proposition in a company. Mm-hmm. And it's almost ludicrous. They'll say, "Yep, we understand. We agree with that. Yep, we agree with your assessment of management. Spot on. Yes, this is a strategic vulnerability they have. Yes, they're doing great. They make great products. So much agreement." And at the end, I'll sit back and I'll say, well, it's just great that we see so much of the same thing, but let me just observe something. Number one, you spend hours and hours running spreadsheets, talking to management, talking to employees, visiting customers, talking to competitors, going to industry conferences. You're doing all this effort. All I did was read the shareholder letter, and we came out with basically the same conclusions.
Crazy. It's a huge amount of time and money you're saving people if they just use your expertise. So what advice would you have, Laura, for someone who is a founder? Maybe they're public, maybe they're not, but they could, if they have to communicate in whatever form that's going to be, whether it's a pitch or a shareholder's letter to people so that you can get a sense of who they are. Is it the candor that, we've had some troubles and we've addressed it, versus trying to just gloss over things? What is it you really look for when you're looking at those letters?
Well, there's something called a strategic balance. And I describe this in my book. After all the years of reading these letters and creating this taxonomy, it became clear that all the topics we were coding and scoring for could be organized into a 7-system model. And those 7 systems are strategy supported by accountability systems, that's 2, vision supported by strong leadership. The backbone of a company are the stakeholder relationships, the quality of those relationships. And in the center of a business is the commitment to capital stewardship. After all, it's a profit-making company. And if you're not focused on how smartly you're allocating the capital, you're probably wasting it, and you won't be meeting your investors' expectations, and you could go out of business. So capital stewardship is a key principle, something to observe. And most importantly is candor. That's the 7th system in this business. And as we've said, candor supports the quality of those stakeholder relationships and builds trust. Now, you asked, how do we make assessments of companies? Well, we have seen over time that companies that are balanced, which have high scores, high linguistic scores, content scores, and are balanced they're not all strategy, but they have good balance between strategy and accountability systems, good balance between vision. It's not, over 50% vision and then very little on the other systems. So companies that are very well balanced, and you think about it, that gives them a solid foundation to deal with whatever, the economy, their competitors, whatever gets thrown at them. So that's one factor. Another factor is the BS and the truth telling, and that's a very important factor. And those are the rankings that we publish every year. We rank order 100 companies based on how much candor, positive candor, truth telling they have, and how much obfuscation or BS they show in their communication. And then when we correlate these top ranked companies and the bottom ranked companies, we've found over the past decade that the top-ranked companies outperform the bottom-ranked and also outperform the market over this period.
So let's talk about the connection between candor and vision, which is one of your other strategies, the systems that you talked about. I'd love to hear that connection and how important it is to balance your vision and your candor.
Well, let me ask you, what do you think of when you think of vision?
Well, I think it's important for a founder to have a vision that they can communicate to the employees about where they see the company going, what the mission statement is, what the big picture is, and then turn around and communicate that to anybody who is going to invest, whether it's an angel investor or a stockholder eventually. And so having that vision, and if that vision needs to change, being able to communicate that with candor.
I'm so glad you asked me that question because it gives me a chance to focus on something that I've been spending a lot more time thinking about. So you're absolutely right. When people think of vision, they often think of what's our mission. And I think the word that kind of relates to that, but I think is more powerful, is what is our purpose?
There we go. Yep.
What is our purpose? And I've been watching this video of Richard Leider, who does a lot of focuses on this, and he likes to say, so what are the two most important days in your life? We can look on this as both a business and as one's own individual life. Is it the day you're born and the day you die? No, he says. The two most important days are the day you're born and then the day you learn why you were born.
Ooh.
For purpose.
Nice. I love that. We're going to tweet that out. The day you were born and the day you learn why you were born. Great.
And that is no different from a company. If you're in a company where you feel that this company is bringing something meaningful into the world, doing it with integrity, you can see what a difference it's making. Boy, that gets you up in the morning. That gets you up. It's like Warren Buffett, who likes to say, I tap dance to work every day.
What a great image that is, because there's a purpose behind what he's doing. It's not just to make money, right?
It is about making money because it's a scorecard to tell who's winning, right?
Right, but it's not just about that.
For him, it's how he's making that money.
Yes,
that's
there we go. With it's integrity.
How can we analyze companies better than others, more smartly? And here's the really important distinction. How can we do it for the long term?
Yes.
What we have is the cancer in our financial system. Here's a tweet for you. The cancer in our financial system is this focus on short-termism.
Yes. That is a cancer, right? Because you're just constantly, that's what causes turnover, that's what causes morale, that causes fear. When you're just focused on short-term vision of, if we don't hit this number for the quarter, you're all fired, or we're totally changing our purpose and our mission statement and, shutting down factories, as opposed to, seeing the big picture of what this could be.
Exactly.
What are some of your other quotes that you like from Warren Buffett? Because he has so many, and I just want to hear what some of your favorites are since you're so connected to him.
Well, the one we've shared that comes from his owner's manual. And the reason why it's so interesting, Berkshire Hathaway is the only company that has published an owner's manual, which means just like if you're buying an appliance and you get the instructions here, this is what you can expect from using this.
Right.
So he wrote the owner's manual. If you buy the stock, this is what you can expect from us, the owners. The reason that candor is one of the principles that he follows and promises to investors is because he says at the end, the CEO who misleads others in public will eventually mislead himself in private.
Oh, there we go. That's it. There's the gem. If you lie to other people, you're eventually going to lie to yourself, right?
Well, exactly right. And thank you for saying that, because that gets us into the topic of Candor Boot Camp. I have worked with corporations on how to bring more candor into the organization. And that means working with teams. What's most successful is when I work with multi-level teams, so anywhere from presidents down to factory workers. That is it's so powerful to get the people who don't normally get to communicate with each other, have conversations with each other, to stimulate that. And there's so much learning that goes on. And it requires a certain humility. You bring in a humility to that, and an openness that leads to innovation and creativity. But Candor Bootcamp, when you think about it, John, it's and this is what we're developing now. Candor Bootcamp needs to be taught in 3 modules.
Okay.
So first, and it's what we've just mentioned in relation to the Buffett quote. First is intrapersonal candor, bringing people together and helping each other suddenly confront the BS in their own lives. What is my own, what am I lying to myself about? What is special? What's my purpose? What is my purpose? And if I don't know what it is, how can I find that out? So there's that whole piece, and people come out of that session, and it's almost like, I don't want to say they've been to church because that has a certain connotation these days, but it's very freeing.
Yes.
However, once people have experienced, what it means to live candidly, to go back into the workplace and work with other people that haven't had this experience can be very hard. So the next module is to bring teams together and practice have skills and exercises where people can practice team-based behavior.
Because that allows everybody to be speaking the same language when you do that, right?
Exactly. And feel safe. The whole point about candor is that you create an environment where people feel safe to say what they really think and what they really mean.
Laura, it's so interesting you said that, because to me, that's the highest compliment anybody can ever give me is, I say I feel safe when I'm with you to be myself. And if someone says that to me, and it's also the highest compliment I can give anybody, right? I can take my mask down. I can be a little bit vulnerable with you. And, when you said earlier about humility is one of the keys to innovation, that's such an important takeaway for our listeners. When you're pitching for funding for your company, you have to come across confident and humble at the same time. In other words, you have to be coachable, because that's where the innovation comes. You can't know everything, and nobody wants to invest in somebody who thinks they know everything, but they want somebody who has a vision with candor and humility, right?
Beautifully said. So that gets us to the 3rd module, which is creating the candid enterprise.
Ooh. What's a candid enterprise? Tell us about that.
Well, we're inventing that even as we speak.
Love it.
So what it means is, okay, you start from the individual. The individual works in teams, but then there is a business, an enterprise, a corporation, whatever, that has a set of principles, a set of goals and strategies that if these are not based on candor, then your teams are not going to be able to be supported in their efforts to candidly co-create and work together and achieve greatness. And so there needs to be a design work to make sure that the enterprise itself has principles and expectations built into it that, getting back to our just prior comment, that make it safe for people to experience candor on the job.
It goes back again what you said is, if you have a purpose of doing greatness, then everyone's focused on that, as opposed to necessarily trying to claim all the glory for a big idea or something, right?
Exactly.
Yes, because that's, not only do you have to create a great team to get investors to want to invest in you, but then you also have to keep them working well together. And it seems to me that this Candor Bootcamp is the secret sauce to keeping a team on the right track, because you can get somebody who wants competitiveness and I want to get promoted over you and I want credit for this, and you're way off purpose, right? And it happens all the time.
That's right. And then that's why those 3 levels, interpersonal, team-based, and enterprise, are absolutely essential to be viewed together. Because if you have one and not the others, you can't support people in this candid enterprise.
How did you come up with the title, Investing Between the Lines? I love the title so much, and it implies a little bit of intuition, but I would love to hear how you came up with that title.
Well, it's a play on words, right? So in fact, a lot of people say to me, well, I love your book, Reading Between the Lines.
Ah!
And I have to say, no, it's investing between the lines. But of course, that's the phrase that most people are familiar with. And what does reading between the lines means, to your point? It means that you intuit, that you're taking signals on what's obvious, the surface, and you're getting deeper meaning from it.
Yes.
And so similarly, investing between the lines means, okay, I'm reading this and I'm intuiting ideas, I'm analyzing, I'm processing information that allows me to make a better, smarter investment decision.
So great. I love it. Laura, how can people find out more about you, investing between the lines, the Candor Bootcamp, Twitter, all that good stuff?
So, first of all, you go to our website, www.rittenhouserankings.com. Secondly, visit my blog, ljrittenhouseforbes.com.
Great. It's just, did you have any last thoughts for our listeners about, how we can all have a bigger purpose, make a bigger difference in the world from what you're doing? Is there something that you would like to leave us with that's inspirational?
Well, here's a very, very important concept. People are often say, we need more trust in the world. We need more candor in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's only going to happen if everybody makes a commitment to be trustworthy.
Nice.
If everybody makes a commitment, okay, I will say what I really think, what I really mean. And I'll say it in a way not to attack people, not to be a jerk, not to beat around the bush, but because I'm committed. My purpose here, I'm committed to work creatively with other people to make a positive difference.
Nice. And what's so great about you is not only do you put that out there, but you also show people how they can do that and make money at the same time. And most people think it's one or the other. And you're a living example of how to put something positive into the world and be strategic and still make a great return on your investments. Laura, I can't thank you enough for being on the show today.
John, thank you for having me. And thank you for the work you're doing.
Thanks. Thanks for listening to the Successful Pitch podcast. If you like the show, please go to iTunes and write a review, and encourage your friends to write reviews too. It really helps get the word out. People say that the longest distance is between someone's mouth and their wallet. People can tell you they're going to invest, but when it comes time to write the check, they don't do it. So how do you get people to say yes and then follow through? Visualize yourself on the left side of a riverbank, and you have to cross the river, and on the other side of the river is where the funding happens. So first, you make up your idea, and then you make it real, and then you make it reoccur. Once you start dipping your toe into the water to get the funding, that's where I can help. I get you across that river faster than you would on your own, with a lot less frustration than you will get when you hear a bunch of no's and you don't know why. So if you want some help getting funded faster with less frustration, go to my free funding webinar, sellingsecretsforfunding.com/webinar, and sign up and get in-depth information on how you can get funded fast. Thanks.